In the next edition of It's About Money, my guest will be Taurus Savant. We're excited to talk with him. He's an artist and musician and lots of good stories to tell us. Stay tuned for the next edition of It's About Money. Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nannette Nocon and thank you for joining us. I'm thrilled to have our guest, Taurus Savant. I'm saying your name correctly, sorry. Taurus Savant.
That's
there
me.
we go. Thank you. He's an artist and musician and he's dabbled in a number of different artistic ventures. So we're excited to talk to you and have you tell us about what you've been interested in, like from poetry to painting and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I am an artist, as we said, an artist, community advocate, graphic designer, painter, published author, youth mentor, musician, and overall just guy on a nice street.
I love it. I love it. And we said that you've lived in Rochester for a good part of your life.
I'm originally from Far Rockaway, Queens, and then moved here in 1993 for a better economic opportunity because, as we know, New York is very expensive. But to come up here and have a life here is pretty decent. So we're still here.
I love Rochester myself. And you're creatively diverse, as they tell us. So tell us about what makes your art creatively diverse.
What makes my art creatively diverse is the joy of infusing my personality, my energy, my disposition into the work that I do. So the work that I do, especially like the music, comes from lived experience, and I'm very much about individuality and expressing yourself fully and openly and honestly. And so when I go out, I move in the sense of audacity so that people can see, hey, this is a viable avenue for folks to be creative, and even people who say that they're not artists. There's so many ways and outlets in which you can express yourself, and I always want to come out to encourage that.
Oh, that's great. For myself, I don't have any artistic talent other than putting good things that people do together. And aesthetically, that looks good to me. So that's the extent of my art, but I do appreciate artists'
There's
work.
art in there.
Yes, you're right, absolutely. You know what? I think there's even the art of conversation. There's art of us wearing our headpieces, right?
That's correct.
So thank you for being empathetic with my required or my necessary cap today. So do you have a preference of the type of art that you do?
It depends on the breeze in the trees, the sunset at night, the time of day. People always told me that I had to pick one and stick with it, and I just rejected that outright and said, I want to do everything. And so writing is really kind of first and foremost in my mind, because that's kind of how I get out my feelings. That's how I purge my emotions. That's how I express myself. It's what I do out in the world between writing songs or writing poems or writing essays or speeches or anything of the like. And that's kind of that's the skill that put me out here for people to see. And so that's the one that I do the most.
So, you know, we're a money show, so help me monetize that. So can you describe for me what a typical day or a perfect day might be?
Well, I get an email from somebody who I may or may not be familiar with, and they ask me to do something for them for a nice monetary moment. And if I like what I'm hearing, then I say yes, and then I do the thing, and then the money comes.
And how do people know about you? How do they discover you?
So I would say about maybe 11 or so years ago, I was sitting at home wanting to kind of get into doing a lot of community work, but I didn't know where to start. And I felt as if from the things that I was seeing out there that people had to either be affluent or they had to be part of a group or they just had to know a lot of people. And so I was intimidated by the idea, but one day I did pick up a copy of the City magazine and just flip through it to find out, you know, events and things that were happening around town. And I decided to see there were things that were in my interest, and I would show up, and I wouldn't really know anybody there, but, you know, I would introduce myself to folks and say, you know, hi, I'm Taurus, I like what you guys are doing, and how can I be a part? and I would just keep showing up places to the point where people just knew me as the guy that showed up to places before they knew that I was an artist in my own right. And so through that, I made lots of good connections between going out to places in public and also making connections online through people who knew that I was putting my art out there, or people who knew about my thoughts and my opinions and my assessments on things that were happening around the city or the country or the world. And through that, all of these connections came into years later, where folks who knew me from maybe 5 or 6 years ago was like, hey, you know, I actually do remember you from this particular event and I really liked your energy. How would you like to help me on a project? And I enjoy the connections of going out, meeting new people, and finding a lot of common ground.
Wow, that's amazing. So, about how old were you when you decided that, from reading City magazine, that newspaper, that was the way you were going to meet people?
At that age, I was 22. I am almost 35 now, and I embrace it in all of its time. I mean, I feel like I just picked up that magazine. Like, I feel like these 10 years have really sped by, and all the connections I've made with all of the people, to see how what we were all doing then to versus like what we're all doing now, and the growth and the success, the accolades, the accomplishments. And I'm proud of myself, and I'm even more proud of the folks who I've been around to see a lot of their dreams come from a thought process to actual fruition and them thriving from it.
Now, when you went to these meetings, did you say, I'm going to meet these people and just be my authentic self, or was there a persona that you had to create to be a part of that?
There's no persona here. The guy that you see in person is the guy you see at the events, which is the guy you see online. And I make a point to do that because sometimes you go into certain spaces that seem a little more reserved or a little more, I suppose, introverted. And I think somebody with a lot of energy may be off-putting to that. But I think that sometimes people need that little bit of disturbance, so to speak, that little bit of agitation to say, hey, we don't have to be so formal in this space. I can be formal, I can be informal. It's a mixture of all of those things, but people who were being their authentic selves made it easier for me to be my authentic self in any space I step in. And so that way, anybody who's coming in after me, if I'm setting opportunities for them, they can feel like they can do the same too and also thrive.
I see. I love it. So that your art is really about your authentic self, that in itself is already artistic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, you know, some people, they get in as an actor. If someone who's an actor, that's what they do. They get into the character, I suppose, not persona, but the character. Whereas the
I was interested in acting for a time. When I was in college many moons ago, I did do one musical theater production, and I did like the production aspect. I liked the end product of, you know, putting on a character and performing for children's. It was a children's musical, and it was like, it was a really exhilarating time. It was something that I wanted to do when I was younger, and I'm not 100% sure I'd want to do that now, but I wouldn't turn down an opportunity to do an acting role if it was given to me.
I see. And you talked about people admiring your opinion about local and national, international news. How do you come to that? How do you develop the thought process, the background, and what do you do?
Well, as a person who has like a lot of lived experience, even though the majority of my lived experience is in Rochester, I do get exposed to other cultures, other cities, other states, other countries. And since we have the World Wide Web and the opportunity to connect from people all over the world and hear their stories and hear their opinions, it helps you have a better shape of what's going on in the world, so that you're not just stuck in a domestic mind of things that are only happening within your four walls of your home or the confines of the block that you live on. And so since I go out and do community work, or I go out to events, I hear a lot what people have to say, and I see what happens in the news, and I feel like somebody who is very opinionated and feel like I'm pretty well-rounded enough to form a rational opinion that I think that people would agree with. I would put threads out on Facebook when I had it, and I would put a lot of threads out on Twitter, and they would reach the folks that it would reach. People would resonate with that, and I would also resonate with the things that they would say, and we'd all, like I said before, find that common ground on what human decency looks like, what social justice looks like, what an ideal world for everybody involved looks like. And so I form my basis of opinions on that, and also just as a human being evolving and growing as everybody does, what would be the ideal world, not just for me, but for everyone. And so I inform myself and then come up with an opinion. I'm never afraid to be wrong. I'm wrong a lot, and I like the exchange of information so that we go, okay, I had this opinion once, and I've now gotten some new information, and now that opinion has changed.
Sure, and that's learning, right?
Yes.
So, and I love that you keep your thinking relevant, right? So that's really good. Authentic, relevance, relevant. That's really fantastic.
Yes.
So, where do you draw your inspiration? Is there something that's my muse? How do you draw your inspiration to keep being
I
interested?
love that folks do have muses. I have been a muse to many of you in my day. I can't say I've ever had one myself, at least any particular one. I have a very vivid imagination, and I've had a lot of very exciting and strange life experiences that I felt there are ways that I could tell those stories via either a song or a poem or a painting, or just giving out a thread and just saying, this experience happened to me, has this ever happened to anybody else? And even going out into the world of other people, sharing like an experience that they may have had, and I go, I thought I was the only one. Somebody else has had this experience too, which makes you more apt to want to share more. Of course, there are things that you can keep close and dear to yourself, but I'm very much about being open and sharing vulnerability, because that's how we connect as humans.
Sure, absolutely. That connection, that well-being, just interacting, that's great. Is there an art form that you're particularly proud of that you've done? Or not even form, but art, and it could be.
I suppose if I had to choose one, and that's difficult because I love them all, I would say I'm proud of the music. Music was something that I discovered at a very, very young age as somebody who used to sing along on the radio and make noises and do beatboxing on garbage cans and make a whole bunch of noise in my room, until I had the capability to turn it into something tangible and worthwhile. And it was originally something I was just doing for myself and things that I was sharing with my online friends. So I never thought about sharing that with the general public, because I wasn't necessarily like concerned with their opinion. I just felt like when I was making my art, I felt like it was for me. And so I didn't know if people would understand it. I didn't know if people would resonate with it, but I decided to start going out to like open mics and such, which I did like maybe about 10, 11 years ago, and watching people do their best out there. And I know that's a scary but admirable feat, to get up on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people you don't know and share your heart, whether you're singing a cover song or you're singing something you wrote or you're doing a poem that you wrote, and having people clap for you and people going afterwards like, I resonated with that. That means a lot to me. I really enjoy, your energy and your work. That gave me the mettle to keep pushing through it, and eventually bringing me to where I'm at today, which I'm super, super appreciative of everyone who has poured into me and invested it in me and given interest and shared with other people to kind of get the name out there and say, hey, this is a talent worth beholding.
Thank you, thank you. The wonderful conversation. We're going to take a short break. My guest is Taurus Savant, an artist, and really exciting stuff to talk about. We'll be right back.
Now I've had my share of tears, but I gotta say, even though I've had some years, just starting today, I don't wanna be sad no more this summer. Be sad no more. I ain't gonna be sad no more this summer. Be sad no more. It's okay to feel how you feel. Go through the motions. Mental illness is real. Oh, don't let nobody tell you otherwise. We're no longer just surviving, 'cause today we gon' thrive. Gonna be sad no more. Ooh, let me hear you say, oh yeah.
And we're back. I'm Nannette Nocon. It's about money. My guest is Taurus Savant, and he's an artist. And I am so happy to have you here, because I'm learning so much about your energy and the things that you do. And so, like when I sing at church, my husband says, Not so loud, honey. So, but how did you teach yourself? You said that you listened to the radio and sang with it and beat the drums. How did you? Do you have a natural singing voice and?
Oh, I appreciate that. I would say so. I mean, I would never say no to a vocal coach. All of the things that I've learned to do in my life through the art, the writing, the music, all of that, I've been completely self-taught. I sit in my room and I just practice, practice, practice. I would love to have had some sort of like tutelage or a mentor to have, help to guide me through the process, but I think there is a sort of magic of figuring it out yourself. Like, I learned music, but I didn't learn to read music. I don't know music theory. I didn't go to school for music, but I think that there, again, is the endless imagination of sounds in your head. And I make sounds in my head. Even to this day, I make the sounds in my head. I record them on a voice recorder because I'll be anywhere. I could be at work. I could be outside. I could be at an event. I could be in the shower, and something will come to me. And I have not the best short-term memory on earth, so I like to sit down, record that really quickly, and then save it for later so I can get back and take it. And I love the feeling of taking something that I thought about in my head and fleshing it out until it is something that ends up getting put out into the world. And I love explaining the process to folks because I think it's easy for people to just assume that there's a lot of automation in it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but all of the things that I've done from scratch, to the playing, to the sequencing, to the recording, to the mixing, all on my laptop. And so it's such a rewarding process to see something from conception, from start to finish, and then say, wow, look at what I just did. That's paramount to me. I truly enjoy it.
That's great. I have this philosophy that in life, the direction of our life depends on the dominant question that we ask ourselves. And most of the time people are unconscious or are not aware of the dominant question that they ask. And sometimes it's the wrong question because it keeps getting to the wrong answer, right? If we're not looking for. I don't know if you've thought about the dominant question in your life, but it seems like it's. I can see it from being in distance. Is there a dominant question that you ask yourself so that you could always learn and become invigorated by the things that you learn and continue to do them?
So the dominant question to me, and it may sound a little cliche, is what is my purpose in life? I came to that conclusion maybe about around the same time, around 10, 11 years ago, where I thought about, okay, my life is going in certain directions. It's now time to start choosing a general avenue to start paving towards if we want to be successful in life. So my question was, what do I see myself doing? What is my purpose? And my purpose is to spread as much joy and creativity and love and happiness through the world simply by me just existing. I feel like if there is any way that I can leave a good impression on anybody I meet in any sort of way, then I feel like I'm moving towards my life's purpose. I get people who come up to me many, many moons ago and they'll say, I remember this one joke that you made like 8 or so years ago, and it just stuck with me. And as a person who doesn't always think too much about the impact that I have on others, I'm very much about, I put it out, I hope that people resonate with it, I hope that they do, and if they do, that's great, but I never kind of revisit it and go, so actually, what did you think about this, or what did you think about that? And there'll be strange, interesting, like one-off conversations that people will remember and keep with them, and I think those memories, the same way I have those kinds of memories with others, are the kind of things that kind of you look back fondly of, even if you're having like maybe a despondent time and go, well, there was that one time when such and such made that joke, and then you have a laugh and then your day gets a little bit better. So if I do that for anybody, then that means a lot to me.
That's great. That's great. So we are a money show, and so you've shared how you came to monetize your talents and the way you think and your perspective. Did you have to get like a regular paying job, or does the money just come because you're doing all these things?
That is the manifestation that the money will come to me as I continue to do those things. The money doesn't come in the manner, in the frequency that I would like it to. But of course, there is a bunch of, monotony and day jobs that I've had to endure over the many years, and even now, just to kind of get there. Because as much as you can move on the spirit of audacity, you still need to fund your lifestyle, you still need to pay rent, you still need to have food, you still need to buy clothes, you still need to actually invest in, the crafts that you're doing. And so I'm not a stranger to having to put my head down and go, all right, we're going to do menial tasks, even though that's not what I see in my future. What I see in my future is people basically pay me to come in and be myself, whether I'm coming in to do a speech, or I'm coming to sit on a panel, or I'm coming to do a reading, or I'm coming to do a performance. And that's been the case for the past, I would say maybe handful of years actually, but as far as that being like the forefront, it's kind of coming into to realization more this year. And I really appreciate any time somebody has a genuine interest, because I do feel like, as much as I like to spread my energy any which way I can feel that it's worthwhile to do it, I also feel like my time is worth something, my skill is worth something, my art is worth something. And I appreciate the many folks who definitely do art as a hobby. And I did do art as a hobby for a long time before I decided to start monetizing it. I actually originally felt uncomfortable with the idea of that because, like I said before, I originally was doing art for myself. So I would get opportunities for like commissions and stuff, and I will always say no, because I'm like, I felt uncomfortable with the idea of somebody paying me to do something like that.
That you love anyway.
But then I said, well, this is what I love, and if enough people, and there were a lot of people who were offering me that, who am I to say no to an opportunity to, like you said, do something you love and be paid for it? So it's a matter of not only doing something you love and being paid for it, but it's also being compensated fairly for it.
Sure. What they say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life,
Exactly.
right? So finding more of those. Well, that's great. I love the balance that you have with reality, and then maintaining the audacity to continue to do what you're doing. So that's great.
Thank
That's
you.
fantastic. So were you raised like that, or did you train your mind to think like that?
I was definitely raised on the merit of hard work, even as we moved into the later decades where it sometimes may seem as if hard work doesn't get you as far. And in certain cases that usually can be the case, but I think it's less about the specific hard work and more about the mindset of a healthy work ethic. So knowing what your limits are and not overextending yourself, because if you don't have a very full cup to dedicate to anything that you're doing, especially if after you do it, you don't even have enough in that cup to replenish yourself, then that's the quick track to burnout. And I've experienced burnout a handful of times in my life, and I'm very apt to never have to experience again. So I've worked hard in all sorts of capacities. I've done all sorts of jobs, which gives you like an interesting amount of skills. I worked customer service for 15 years of my life. So back when I didn't want to do that, and still kind of don't want to do that, but what it does teach you about the general public, about how to handle difficult situations, about how to manage a team, about how to get along with others who have differing opinions, of how to have leadership skills, but also know what your role is, to know when it's time to fall back. And even to your point earlier when you mentioned about singing in the church, I think that there's still a distinction where you don't have to be the loudest one in the choir, but you can still very much be distinct, where it's like, okay, we hear the blending of voices, but we still hear yours in there. And that's where I fit in most. Sometimes you just end up standing out any which way, but at the very least, I don't claim or ever aspire to be the loudest one in the room, but you'll always know that I was in the room.
Ah, very beautifully said. That's wonderful. So what advice would you give to someone who are looking to pursue similar passion? Your passions are like wide and deep, and so what would you advise someone who says, I want to be like Taurus? What would your advice be?
Well, I would say I don't want anybody to be like me. I want everybody to be themselves, but
yes,
if you
of
can
course.
take anything from me, you can take away the fact that I walked around and said to people that I am going to do this, I am going to do this, and I am going to do this. And through not just manifestation, but putting myself in the position to receive the things that I'm asking for and moving in the spirit of attaining those goals is being, not only just being audacious, not only just applying yourself, but understanding that you are fully capable. There is not a way that you are not capable. And the second that you immediately say, I can't do this, you've kind of already set yourself up, I wouldn't say for failure, but I would say a lesson that you can learn about your capability. There's a lot of people that are out here who I would say have very, very few credentials who are doing a lot more on a lot less. And there's a lot, and what I love the most about Rochester is that there's such a brilliance of talent and creativity. And I think that if there was like a spinning wheel of tasks or skilled trades and you threw a dart at the wheel, you could find somebody in Rochester who does that. Unfortunately, they don't have their own business because money becomes a factor, funding becomes a factor, so they're stuck working at a day job while doing that as their passion. But if they just had that extra push beyond, getting that funding to show, okay, I have a product or I have something that I think the world would appreciate, and just to get the marketing or anything out there to say, this is me, guaranteed there's an audience of people who want what you have. And I'm grateful for the audience who likes what I have, asks for more of it, and gives me the wherewithal to keep providing it to the best of my ability.
That's great. That's well said. You're absolutely right. We don't want a duplicate of a copy of ourselves, but and that's the way to do it. Meet lots of people, pick what you can learn, and create your own. Right? That's really the best way. So, and do you have? Are there any obstacles that you have faced that kind of was too challenging, or do you always have the perspective, what did I learn? I mean, from what I hear you say, it seems that the latter rather than the former.
In order for me to even sit here today to speak the way that I'm speaking, I've had to face immeasurable amounts of obstacles. I think things that people wouldn't even believe. But while I'm of the mindset of, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I think there's a lot of unnecessary strife that people end up facing that can sometimes put them off for the worse. But ultimately, if you're undeterred from your goal, then I think that there are setbacks that you'll have, but that gives you more time to rebuild yourself. And I think that, like I said, it's okay to fail. It's okay to run into obstacles, because when you run into your problem solving skills, you hopefully have a village and community of people who can help you navigate through it. Because when I started out, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have a clear vision of how I was going to enact that. And of course, the very first obstacle was not having enough money to go to certain places. But you get to know certain people, and if those people believe in you enough, sometimes they'll be able to vouch for you. And I think sometimes I'm not a person that ever likes to flex the connections, because a lot of people who have a lot of reach and a lot of opportunity and a lot of influence, but you want to move in the merit of doing it yourself. That's something that I still struggle with, because I consider myself, the joke is strong, independent, don't need no man. But sometimes it's difficult to continue being strong all the time, being independent all the time. And while I do feel like I'm very much independent, I think there's nothing wrong with leaning into those folks and asking for help, saying, okay, I actually need some assistance doing this, or who do you know that can help me with this? What I am the most grateful for, and one thing I would absolutely love to bring up, is my involvement in a series called In This Moment. If you're familiar with it, In This Moment chronicles the stories of Black luminaries in Rochester. We are in our third volume now, and it is heralded by good friends of mine, Amanda Chestnut and Jean Strazabosco, who we love and adore, and we feature folks whose stories don't always get told in Rochester, so that they can be featured in libraries, community centers, schools, and people can read. So you have those Black luminaries whose stories get told, you get the photographers who are also Black, and you get the writers who are also Black. I was thankful to be one of the writers in the first volume, and I wrote about Herb Smith, who is the third trumpeter, conductor of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. And the reason I bring that up is because we had such a community of people. Year in year, it gets bigger and bigger, of folks who are so brilliant and have so many resources. And the best part about it is, while it was independently funded, we were paid very handsomely for that work, and that extends into opportunities to not only talk about the initiative, but also to just talk about some of the stories that we have ourselves about our times in Rochester, about our crafts, and get people engaged in learning more about local history.
That's great. Thank you in the moment. I wish we had more time because there's so much to talk about. Thank you so much,
Of
Taurus
course.
Savant, for being our guest at It's About Money. I hope, guests, that you enjoyed our show today. I certainly did. Until next time, I'm Nannette Nocon. It's About Money.